Dear viewers, welcome you all to our regular show, Orthopedic Solution Academy. Hope you all are well with your families during this COVID pandemic time by wearing masks and keeping distance with each other. And I would like to give you the greetings of Merry Christmas as because of today is Merry Christmas. Dear viewers, today our topic is flat food, a very important topic. Sometimes we ignore this topic, but this suffers a lot to the patient. So we are going to discuss the topic that is flat food. And our honorable speaker is Dr. Sundarajan sir, head of arthroscopy and foot and ankle Ganga Hospital, former president, Foot and Ankle Society of India. So welcome to our show.
Thank you.
And we have our learned academic panel, one from Bangladesh, that is Professor Jahangir Alam, treasurer Bangladesh Orthopedic Society and country representative of Foot and Ankle of APOA. Welcome, sir. Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
And another one from Calcutta, Dr. Sunit Hazra, Associate Professor, R.G. Kaur Medical College and Hospital. Dr. Sunit Hazra.
Good evening.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Dear viewers, our topic is flat food, and this is mainly an academic program. And definitely we will discuss about the flat food, and you can ask many questions in our chat box. We'll try to answer your questions. So we don't want to spend any more time, and we would like to request our honorable speaker, Dr. Sundarajan sir, to start his nice presentation. And the topic is flat food. Dr. Sundarajan sir, please.
Tanvir, can you see my slides?
Yes, sir. We can see and we can hear you clearly and loudly.
Thank you. So today's topic is about the flat foot. So I think for the beginner, if you are not sure of what is flat foot, it is otherwise called bisplanus or fallen arches, where your middle border of the foot is abnormally in contact with the floor during weight bearing, like this. So normally you have an arch, but when you do a weight bearing, if the middle border of the foot comes and touches the floor, then you call it as a flat foot. Usually it can be associated with the deformities or may not, depending upon the cases. So there are two kinds of flat foot which all of us are aware of. One is a flexible flat foot, other is a rigid flat foot. What do you mean by flexible rigid foot? The flexible rigid foot, there is an arch with no pressure on the foot. But upon standing there is a loss of height of the arc. But when you take off the weight, again, it recreates the arch. So only when you're doing weight bearing, you will see the flat foot. If you don't do the weight bearing, then it recreates the arch. This is called flexible flat foot. It is very normal in toddlers. When you born, all of us born with the flat foot. Some patients, it could be a hereditary. For some patients, they can have a generalized ligamental laxity, like or joint hypermobility. So these patients also tend to have the flexible flat foot. This is an example of a 12-year-old boy who have presented with the deformity of the both feet, the 2 years duration, and he presented with the pain. Yes, you see from this front view, you can see the forefoot abduction in the right side comparing to the left side. This is more. And you can see that in clinical examination, when he stands, you can see that my arch can see, but when he does the weight bearing, we can see that complete collapse of the arch. And also you can see the forefoot abduction in this view too. And also you can see there is a valgus of the right side. When he stands, you can see that varus comes back. That indicates that there is subtalar mobility is there. So this is called, this is a sign for the flexible flat foot which we examine. The valgus will be there on weight bearing. When it stands, you can see that again it goes for varus. That means this is a flexible flat foot. This is one of the examination which you look for a flexible flat foot. And this is the too many toe signs. You can see when the patient stands here you are able to see usually we'll see the fifth toe. But when you see on the right side, you're able to see the 3 or 4 toes. This is called too many toes sign. When it comes to the rigid flat foot or a stiff flat foot, where here the foot has got no arch, whether you're doing weight bearing or non-weight bearing. Even if you take off your weight, still that rigid flat foot persists. So this is called rigid flat foot or a stiff flat foot. It's very common in childhood, especially some patients can have a congenital vertical talus or tarsal coalition. It could be an inflammatory disorders or a neurological disorders or Charcot arthropathy. So these can have a rigid flat foot. So when you come to the adult flat foot, so mostly I'm going to discuss today about the adult flat foot. And most importantly, most important cause is the posterior tibial tendon disorder. Other causes are tarsal coalition, Charcot arthropathy, inflammatory or post-traumatic conditions, or neuromuscular. Basically, I'm going to concentrate on this posterior tibial tendon disorder because all other conditions, mostly they're all comes with the rigid flat foot. Usually they'll end up with the fusions. Only the PTD has got different stages and different management and different stages. So what we call as an acquired flat foot because of the tibialis posterior tendon deficiency. So if you think the components of the flat foot, how does it, the deformity starts taking place? We know that the talar head displaces medially, anteriorly and downwards. Calcaneum everts and dorsiflex, that's why hind foot goes for valgus. And the navicular subluxed dorsolaterally, that resulting in the forefoot abduction. I will come back to this later again. So all these patients should be looked for the heel valgus deformity that can have a subluxation of the subtalar joint, eversion of the calcaneum, that can have the lateral angulation of the midtarsal joint, that is a forefoot abduction, and supination of the forefoot. And many times these patients will have a tight endoachilles also. So these patients may need to look for that finding. So this is the patient of 49 years old lady, painful walking for 1.5 years. This is the flat foot when the standing here. This patient's clinical assessment should be done. You should look for the valgus deformity. You should look for the too many toe sign. In generally all the flat foot, you should look for all the tiptoe test where you look for the flexible flat foot and also gait. And Jack's test. Jack test is nothing but just lifting the great toe, resulting in, because of the windlass mechanism of the plantar aponeurosis, it recreates the arch. Again, the Jack's test is one of the tests for the flexible flat foot. Or if there is an advanced cases, we should look for arthritic changes, which is resulting in a rigid foot. Of course, you have to examine the spine and hip, knee, and neuromuscular cases. So all the patients also, we should look for the ligament laxity and tendoachilles tightness, which all already told. This patient has got a mild valgus in the heel from the posterior aspect. And the ankle range of movements are good, that is normal. Because always you should always look for the ankle movements and subtalar movements, whether they are present or not. This is examined for the subtalar movements. It's how do you examine for you lock the knee joint by doing the dorsiflexion and examine the subtalar joint. Here it's a flexible flat foot with the mobility in the subtalar joint. Then the tibialis posterior strength has to be examined and whether to find out any weakness of the tibialis posterior tendon. This is how the patient walks with a painful gait with the flat foot. But this patient had only minimum or stage 1 of the posterior tibial tendon disorder in adult flat foot. Stage 1 is minimum or there is no deformity. These patients can have a tenosynovitis, only tenosynovitis of the tibialis posterior tendon most often. So this is the stage 1 where you have a tenosynovitis of the tibialis posterior. There won't be much deformity, but you can have sometimes mild valgus deformity of the heel. Patient usually presents with the pain on the medial side. Of course, the single limb heel rise, they can have a mild weakness and hind foot inverts normally. Once the tiptoe, when the patient stands on tiptoe, the valgus becomes normal. And there won't be too many toe signs here because there is no forefoot abduction deformity and there is no ankle deformities. This is the stage 1. So how do you treat these cases? Do you need an MRI? If there are no deformities, if the posterior tibialis posterior tenosynovitis is clinically present, if you want to confirm the diagnosis, we can do an MRI, but most often you may not. How to conservative management? You can do a doesn't it doesn't mean that all these patients, because of the tenosynovitis, they require surgery. So most of the patients respond well to weight reduction, activities modification, footwear with the medial arch support, anti-inflammatory medications, or if they have an acute phase, we can even give a short period of immobilization. If they fail to respond in 6 months time, then you can go for a surgical management. Usually open on the medial side, look for the tendon. Most often they will be inflamed, or there could be a tear in the tibialis posterior tendon like this. So sometimes when by doing a debridement and repair may be sufficient. If it is a type 1 case, they may escape without any pain. This is another patient, 35 years old male patient, presented with a history of pain in the ankle for 1 year and is increased in the last 5 months and have a difficulty in weight bearing. So this is the standing x-rays. You can see that from posterior aspect, the left heel is in more valgus than the right side. Movements are normal here. Again, this is a flexible flat foot. We can see the patient on some tiptoe, but heel is in varus. When he puts weight on that, it goes for valgus. So it's in a flexible flat foot stage. These are subtalar movements. They are normal. You can see the walking. That this patient has a typical very painful gait. You can see from posterior aspect, you see the left heel goes for valgus. You are able to see some abduction. That is because of the pain, not much deformity, but because of the pain, he walks on like that. So what x-rays to take in these cases? To look for the deformity, you should take an AP, lateral and oblique view where you can find talonavicular displacements. We can sometimes see the tarsal coalitions and flattening of the arc. Specifically, you are looking for the Meres angle, where the angle between the long axis of the talus and first metatarsal bone. If the angle greater than 4 degrees of a convex, then it considered as a flat foot. If it is 15 to 30 degrees, there could be a moderate flat foot. If it's greater than 30 degrees, there could be a severe flat foot. The first metatarsal and the talus, usually normally it almost on the straight line within the variation of 4 degrees. And also another important measurement can help you is a calcaneal pitch, where normally it constitutes around 17 to 20 degrees. If it less than 17 degrees, then you should think that it's a flat foot. So other than that, the normal alignment of the sinus tarsi, where you put a round here, you can able to see that this is the sinus tarsi between the talus and calcaneum. But if there is a collapse of the arch, you can see this is this arch, this circle has been deformed here. Another important finding to look for is the talonavicular coverage, where you can see that this is the talus, this is the navicular. So this is the one of the important finding to be examined to look for the stage of the deformity, and management depends upon that how much talonavicular coverage is maintained or lost. The stage 2, which I already talked about, the tibialis tendon, posterior tibial tendon will be elongated or degenerated. Still deformity is flexible, as already told about that, I showed in that case. Pain usually on the medial side, sometimes in the lateral side, or on the both medial and the lateral side. Single limb heel rise, usually marked weakness or no, or sometimes there will be a weak inversion of the hind foot. The valgus deformity may not come to the full varus. That would be a weakness over there. Too many toe signs is positive, like what you saw in that video, and there won't be any problem in the ankle. So this is the stage 2. This is another classification by the Meyerson modification, where he added a type 2A and type 2B, depending upon the talonavicular coverage. As you see, this is a case where AP and lateral looks to be perfect. And you can see this is the weight bearing x-ray, the complete collapse of the arch. And these patients came with an MRI, but it is not required in type 2 stage. So this is the classical x-ray which you look for the type 2A and type 2B. You can see that type 2A, there is a less than 30% of talonavicular coverage, uncoverage. If it goes more than 30% of uncoverage, that is called type 2B. That means these patients will have a more forefoot abduction than type 2A. So usually type 2A will have a more pain on the medial side. Once it goes for more forefoot abduction, they can have a pain on the lateral side because of the lateral impingement. So how to proceed with this case? You can see this case had a less than 30% of talonavicular coverage and no forefoot abduction, even though there are too many too many toe signs, but not much forefoot abduction deformity. This patient didn't respond to the conservative management. Again, this stage also, we should try conservative management with arch support, tibialis posterior strengthening exercises for 3 months to 6 months. If they don't have any improvement with the footwear and the physiotherapy, then they can go for a surgery. So what to do? We can do a tibialis posterior debridement. We can do a excise the degenerated tendon, or we can do a support with along with that we can do a tendon transfer, whether do an FDL or FHL. In some cases, if the spring ligament has gone, we can do a spring ligament reconstruction. What do you mean by spring ligament? Is a calcaneonavicular ligament which holds the calcaneum and navicular. So if it goes off, this can be reconstructed more than the repair. So in patients with the valgus deformity, then we can do a medial displacement osteotomy. So this case, patient has got a valgus deformity. So what we did is medial displacement osteotomy, calcaneal osteotomy, along with tibialis posterior debridement because they were very much degenerated. So this was here FDL transfer was done. So FDL is just lies. This is the tibialis posterior degenerated tendon. FDL lies just posterior to that. They can take it off and make a tunnel over from posterior to anterior and the navicular, and we can fix with the interference screw. Or sometimes you can do even tenodesis. That is also fine. And also you can see that medial displacement osteotomy. This is a 6 months follow-up with the healing of the osteotomy. So this patient did well with osteotomy, debridement, and FDL transfer. Then another patient of 49 years old female patient presented with the left foot pain since 1.5 years. Again, progressive pain, insidious onset, not relieved with the conservative management. So this patient had a bilateral problem, complete medial arch collapse and heel in valgus. Our movements are free, but tibialis posterior tendon is very, very weak. You can see the heel valgus here from the posterior aspect. This is the X-ray which I showed, that film which I showed there to show the heel valgus, tibialis posterior tendon. Here again, the same patient, same kind of procedure. You can see that around the 10 mm displacement of the calcaneum on the medial side and the FDL transfer, and this patient did very well. This is the 9 months post-op. And this same patient is walking without any pain comfortably. So when we talk about the medial calcaneal osteotomy, this is not a new, because this was, you can see that it was introduced in 1971, where he said that by sliding osteotomy for the calcaneum, it will take off the load from the lateral side to the center. So basically it's indicated whenever there's a stage 2 flat foot with hindfoot valgus, that is without any fixed deformities, or residual valgus deformity after subtalar fusion. That also can be combined if there is a fusion. In the case of the severe deformities in the stage 3 or 4, it is contraindicated when there is an isolated forefoot deformity or subtalar arthritis and limited motion. Then that patients may require osteotomy along with the fusion. So by doing the medial translation of a 10 mm, as here, it unloads the lateral aspect of the tibial joint and decrease the strain on the deltoid and the spring ligament, and reposition the axis of the action of the axialis tendon, make it at the center. But instead of like this, you can see that the pull of the tendinogenes becomes center once you do an osteotomy. And also it corrects the hindfoot valgus and improves the inversion. So this is the diagrammatic picture of a calcaneal osteotomy, where you do an osteotomy from the lateral side, displace the distal fragment to 10 mm, then fix the screw from posterior to then the axial view. So each millimeter of medial translation corresponds to 1.52 mm of change in the moment of the arm. When you come to the tendon transfer, we can do an FDL or FHL. FDL lies very close to the PTT tendon. That helps you to get back the dynamic function of tibialis posterior tendon. Again, FHL is more stronger than FDL. Or we can do even peroneus brevis augmentation of tibialis posterior tendon. FDL is mostly favored by surgeon because it is adjacent to the tibialis posterior tendon, as already told, and also it straightforward to the locate the anatomically, and function is more expandable than the grade 2 function. So you don't lose much function compared to the FHL. But FHL has got a larger size and was superior to by the biomechanical study that is superior than FDL. However, in clinical scenario, it was not shown in much difference from the FDL. So the optimum location of FDL transfer or navicular or medial cuneiform, or you can do even tenodesis, as I told, tenodesis to the tibialis posterior tendon. So tenodesis is more physiological. So transfer to the navicular or medial cuneiform provided more secure fixation. So I do usually with the interference screw in the navicular bone. Tendon transfer alone is a weak biomechanically and does not change the medial longitudinal arch, height, or hindfoot valgus deformity. So biomechanical and clinical success when FDL FHL tendon transfer is combined with the bony realignment procedure. So there is no indication for tendon transfer alone. So always it is combined with the bony procedure like a medial displacement calcaneal osteotomy. There is another procedure which is called lateral column lengthening. So when you do a lateral column lengthening, the purpose is almost like a medial calcaneal osteotomy. We can do an osteotomy in the calcaneum, lateral and lateral anterior part of the lateral part of the calcaneum. We can use a graft or an implant to keep the calcaneum in distraction around 6 to 8 mm. Or you can do a distraction arthrodesis of the calcaneal cupid joint also. You can see the diagrammatic pictures of the calcaneum. Here you can see that calcaneal cupid joint distraction arthrodesis where it is opened up. Put a graft, you can put a plates over there. So this lengthen the lateral column over here. Or you can do an osteotomy on this part corresponding to the sinus tarsi. You can open it up and put a graft and fix it up with the plate. So lateral column lengthening, also the amount of graft usually 4 to 8 mm in lateral column lengthening, whether you do an arthrodesis or a calcaneal osteotomy. So each millimeter of the lengthening corresponds to the 6.8 degree of changes in the lateral incongruency angle. So compared between the calcaneal lateral column lengthening osteotomy with calcaneal cuboid wedge osteotomy with the subtalar arthrodesis in this article shows that calcaneal lengthening osteotomy showed greater correction capacity of the talonavicular subluxation in spite of presence of more frequent and severe complication. So this author supports the calcaneal lengthening osteotomy. So you can see that this case, this is the talonavicular uncoverage. If you do after doing the lengthening, you can see that the correction has been achieved by cutting the normal angle of the talus and the navicular. So by doing that lengthening, it corrects the forefoot abduction and resulting in it covers the talonavicular joint. So both the medial calcaneal osteotomy and the lateral lengthening osteotomy produces similar improvements. Both almost gives the same purpose. And then radiographic measurement also shows AP and lateral of the talo-first metatarsal angle and calcaneal pitch. In both procedure, it gives the similar results. However, MCO, medial calcaneal osteotomy, resulted in better first tray plantar flexion and varus, while LCL produced greater improvement in heel inversion. Sometimes you can do both to get a better correction if the deformity is very, very severe. So when you do a spring ligament reconstruction or a repair, because it's I have not done spring ligament reconstruction, but few of the surgeons do the spring ligament reconstruction by using the grafts. So as already told, this is the anatomy of the spring ligament between the calcaneum and the navicular. There's got two bundles. You can use the repair also by using the fiber tape with interference screws. However, the studies have shown that the reconstruction of the spring ligament is favored than the direct repair because the ligaments are very, very difficult to repair it up. So reconstruction gives better results than the repair. This is another patient of 50 years old female patient presented with the deformity like this. As you see here, this is the Jack's test which I told. Normally, when you do the dorsiflexion of the great toe, it reconstitutes the arch. But you can see that here, it's a rigid, flat foot it is not recreating the arch. Flat foot with the forefoot abduction deformity and also heel valgus deformity. You can see that this patient, when she stands, the heel valgus is fixed. It is doesn't come to the neutral or in the varus position of the normal patient, normal patient. So you can see that there is no subtalar movements here. So this is a rigid flat foot by losing the subtalar mobility too. This is how she walks. You can see the heel valgus and the forefoot abduction. You can see that already some arthritic changes has taken place over the talon-navicular joint with the osteophytes. This is what I told you. See the lateral view, you don't see the sinus tarsi at all. The normal circle is completely lost over here. So that means there could be a subluxation of the subtalar joint also, along with the collapse. We can see that the lateral displacement of the calcaneum almost impinges with the fibula. That is the photography to shows that normal side and abnormal side, where you can see that weight bearing is less over there. So this is a type 3, where the patient will have a severe pain, fixed deformity, unable to perform the heel raise test. And how to proceed again? If the patient doesn't respond to the conservative management, of course, these patients required only arthrodesis, triple arthrodesis or a double arthrodesis. You can see this here, subtalar arthrodesis, and you can see the talon-navicular arthrodesis with the screws. And along with this patient also had a problem in the first MTP arthritis with the deformities that was fused. This is another patient of 67 years old lady, presented with the pain and deformity of the both feet. You can see right side is more, as you see here. You see the right side, complete valgus collapse. I can see the almost you are able to see all the five toes. This is a severe deformity. You can see here in that other view, and ankle movement is normal, and that is the subtalar movement. You can see there is some subtalar movement still persist, but you can see the walking here. The patient almost walks on the medial border of the foot. You can see the whole heel is in valgus. So this patient had the tilt of the talus. You can see that this is the ankle joint. So all these flat foot patients, any rigid foot patients, you should take X-ray of the ankle joint. You can see the normal joint, and we can see the affected side. So this patient had a type 4A deformity of the flat foot. You can see this is the type 4, where you have along with the fixed deformities, this patient will have a valgus deformity with or without arthritis. Without arthritis is type 4A, and type 4B is fixed ankle valgus with or without arthritis. The patient who got arthritis, then we required fusion only because there is no other option. So this patient underwent tibio-talocalcaneal fusion. So overall, to summarize, so any patient in stage 1, we can assess the MRI if the tibialis posterior tenosynovitis is there. Still, they can be treated conservatively. These patients will have a spring ligament is always will be normal. If the tibialis posterior tendon is good, then just we can do a debridement and repair. Sometimes these patients may require a tendon transfer or osteotomy if there is a valgus deformity. In stage 2, again, if the conservative treatment fails, these patients, if the MRI can help to assess the spring ligament. If there is spring ligament is torn, we can do a repair or reconstruction. Or along with this, we can do if his spring ligament is normal, we can go ahead and do a tendon transfer also. It doesn't mean that all the patients require if the spring ligament reconstruction is not possible, then the patient may require arthrodesis in these cases sometimes. Of course, in stage 3, there is no other option because they are rigid foot. They require only triple arthrodesis. Type 4 with the ankle involvement. If there is no arthritis, we can do all the triple arthrodesis with the deltoid ligament repair or reconstruction. If there is arthritis, then patient require arthrodesis. Of course, in Western world, they do sometimes triple arthrodesis or subtalar arthrodesis along with the total ankle replacement. But we don't have that option, so we do fusion of the ankle joint. Thank you very much. Anyway, I will just add one more case of flexible flat foot. In that, this is a 2 years old boy with the deformity here. Again, this is the video which I showed before. This same X-ray I was showing. Sometimes the deformity is very severe that these patients will not be able to walk normally or run or do the sports. So sometimes these patients, if they fail to conservative management, like with all the exercises with the shoes and arch support, sometimes these patients may, sometimes we can do a surgery. What surgery we can do? We can do a soft tissue procedure, osteotomy, or arthrodesis. Arthrodesis is nothing but where you insert the implant in the subtalar joint to prevent the valgus deformity. Of course, arthrodesis we usually try to avoid. So sometimes these patients require osteotomy, lateral column lengthening. Here I did a lateral column lengthening with allograft for the gap of lengthening of 8 mm. This is the medial displacement osteotomy. You can see the 10 mm displacement on the medial side. So this is the final X-ray of this patient. And this patient was completely all right, able to walk better. This is another severe deformity. You can see the right side also is there. Left side is very severely deformed. She was not able to even walk properly. She's a 17 years old girl. You see that on the left side, there is very severe deformity. You can see that she's walking almost on the medial malleolus. So that much severe deformity. You can see the complete collapse. This is the right side. See the normal joint over here. You see the left side. There is a complete collapse of your metatarsal joint and that talonavicular joint and subtalar joint. So this patient again, because of the severe deformity, we did an arthrodesis. I did a cotton osteotomy for the forefoot supination and also the medial displacement osteotomy. That is the final picture of this patient. Because he's 18 years old, I did an arthrodesis too. So that is the front view, that is the back view. This is the operated side. You can see that compared to the previous deformity, this is completely normal, and she could walk better with a lot of stability on the left side, but still she has got deformity on the right side too. Thank you very much. Tanvir?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your nice presentation. I think this is a tricky operation, and we need to know mathematics well to do these operations. It's a little that was not very common in our country. I would like to request our honorable academic panel to share our knowledge and share their knowledge with us. I would like to request Dr. Sunit Hazra sir first to
Yeah.
share his knowledge regarding this flat foot and this mathematical type of operations.
No, I think I have done few, but not much. I think, but Sundarajan sir must have very vast experience. But I think, since I am working in a government hospital, the patients do come. I think you need to diagnose it, particularly in stage 1 and 2. Usually, patient doesn't turn up very frequently at your OPD. So you need to pick up those patients and you need to counsel them that you probably need some sort of management that is more important than just giving them some sort of painkiller for their benefit. I think if you keep if you know that these sort of diseases are there and then you are in your OPD, then you probably start picking up those patients as well. So even though I doesn't do too much of foot and ankle surgery, but still I sometimes pick up these patients. I think it's a reasonably common disease. I think.
Thank you. Thank you
And
very
sir,
much,
I think
sir. Yes, sir.
Tanvir, can I ask one question to Sundar sir? I think he has elaborated
Okay.
very nicely and doesn't have much scope for much query, but still just wanted to share 1 or 2 queries.
Yes.
Sure, sir. Sure. Sure.
Yeah, I think sir, in stage 1 disease, where do you do the debridement and repair? I think my personal experience are poor in those situations, as I think the tendon is already degenerated. So I think debridement removal of the synovium gives only temporary relief, and I think patient in most of the time, even after the tendon heals, it is usually some sort of fibrotic tissue. Either it's acts as a fixed length phenomenon, or may land up with the progression of the disease. So, what is your experience on those situations?
Yeah, of course. Most often the stage one can be treated conservatively. We don't require surgery at all. And sometimes the patient doesn't respond to the conservative management like anti-inflammatory or medial arch support for quite some time. Then if they have persistent pain and disability, then we can do the surgical procedure. But as you said, even the stage one, there are different stages when do the patient present, and the quality of the tendon is different in even stage one. All the stage one tendons are not the same, but sometimes the tendon quality is not that much fibrotic, as you said. If sometimes you can see the partial tear, but if you see that clinically when you tested that tibialis posterior is working very well, that there are the films which I had shown is very rare. Even I don't operate type 1 very often. Maybe I'm going to done two or three cases only I'm going to done the type 1. So in that case, particularly because the tendon quality of the tendon is good, so we could repair. And but I didn't do any additional procedures. Then I continued with the conservative management by giving a medial arch support. Then after 6 weeks of immobilization, then allowed for after 3 months we started doing the rehabilitation by like tibialis posterior strengthening exercises. But it doesn't mean that they won't go for further stages, but it may relieve temporarily for them for that particular period of time. But as you said, sometimes the tendon can further deteriorate in the future. They can progress to the stage 2 or 3. Anyway, that could be at least a temporary relief for them at that time.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for your nice presentation and answer also. Now, I would like to request Professor Jahangir Alam, sir, to share his knowledge regarding the topic and the operations. Professor Jahangir Alam, sir.
Lecture from Sundarajan sir, and nothing else residual to talk. But he gave a so elaborate lecture. After giving this lecture, nothing to residual, but it depends upon treatment, depends upon type of tissue involvement, either soft tissue or bony or both, or either it is congenital or neurological or any other type, and it is what is the type 1, 2, 3, 4. But as the treatment depends on the type, and Sundarajan sir gave the lecture elaborately. But parents of patients if the patient is children, is a treatment is not completely recovered, or the blood foot is not fully recovered, but a recovered treatment. So there is some residual deformity or residual symptoms like pain may happen. But we have to do better than the previous. And so the sir told elaborately as the symptoms by this treatment, as bony fusion or tendon transfer or conservative or some physical therapy, we have a treatment options, and it depends upon the type of the symptoms and deformity of the patients. So as the flat foot is a difficult or complex subject, but we can give some improvement, or in case of many times we have give many improvement from their deformity and difficulty by many ways, even triple arthrodesis. So by giving this speech, I am concluding my speech. And again, thank you, Sundarajan sir, for giving his elaborate about on this neglected topics, flat foot. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I think the idea of presentation, if it helps to diagnose the stages of the disease, is very important, because We should not think that all the flat foot is same. Okay, all the flat foot does just put a middle as support and send the patient. I think that happens very commonly with all our orthopedic surgeons. Unless you put your thought in foot and ankle, you don't think about the stages of flat foot. When you see in the clinic, okay, flat foot, okay, just give a middle as support. So that should not be the case, where you should individually examine the patient clinically to look for the deformities which we spoke now, and find it. And this quality of life improves especially when you find the patient in stage 2, stage 2A or stage 2B, and that by doing that, identifying the patients and treating the patients by even surgically, that improves the quality of the life for the patient. At the same time, it slows or stops the progression of the deformity to the stage 3 and 4. So it is very important to identify the stage 2 is critical. Of course, many of our patients may not subject to surgery. Sometimes they say, no, okay, I'm okay, give me support, give me tablets, it's okay. But if the patient is reasonably knowledgeable, if they understand the disease, then they subject for the surgery. That is good for them because that prevents the deformity. It prevents the later on arthrodesis, or it postpones that. So definitely that when you can still have the flexible food for quite long time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I think this presentation will help us a lot to diagnose the case firstly. If we can diagnose the case, that we cannot treat the patient. I think this lecture is a very fantastic lecture for diagnosis the case and then the rest of the part of the case. Thank you very much. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, Dr. Soundararajan sir, and thank you, our Honorable Academic Panel, Professor Jahangir Alam sir and Dr. Sunit Hazra sir for being with us. And I would like to thank Renata Pharmaceuticals Limited for sponsoring this program, and definitely Raj TV for being with us. And I'm Dr. Mohammad Tanvir Ashraf. Thank you very much, viewers. Please stay tuned with us, and we will see you in 2021 with another new topic. Till then, have a nice day and have a safe day. Bye-bye.
You are watching Raj TV, Jagorone, Bangladesh. Please subscribe our channel.
Tanvir? Hello.
স্যার সুন্দর স্যার, থ্যাংক ইউ স্যার।
ঠিক আছে, মানে তাকে দিয়ে বেশি কথা বলার লাগবে, আমাদের কথা বলারছে।
কেন, অবশ্যই স্যার, এটা তো খুবই স্বাভাবিক স্যার। এটা